Now, the war in Iran threatens to potentially disrupt the global energy supplies, presenting one of the most daunting challenges to global energy security in recent times. My colleague Shreya Upadhyay takes you through how countries across the globe are now preparing to try and deal with this impending crisis. Over to you, Shreya.
Absolutely. Let's tell you how the entire world is now preparing for this entire fuel crisis that the world is witnessing. Remember, as fuel prices are surging, we are looking at different countries really grappling with and bracing themselves for what is to come in the next few weeks as oil prices surge following the West Asia war, remember, and the disruptions around the Strait of Hormuz. That's the center stage, the centerpiece, and governments across the world are scrambling to roll out emergency measures to stabilize the energy supplies and protect consumers. Analysts, remember, meanwhile, they're warning that prices could climb as high as $150 per barrel if disruptions continue. But first, let's take a look at the key energy facilities that have been hit during the ongoing war, and then I'm going to tell you how different countries are really preparing for it. Let's begin with Qatar first. Energy has shut down the Ras Laffan LNG terminal. Remember, after a drone strike here in Qatar, this particular plant was hit. This facility, remember, is the world's largest LNG export hub, and Qatar accounts for roughly 20% of global LNG supply. Let's shift our focus now to Saudi Arabia. The Ras Tanura port and refinery, which is one of Saudi Arabia's key oil export hubs, was temporarily shut following a drone impact and a fire. So here in Saudi Arabia, this particular Ras Tanura refinery, a significant one, has been impacted. Moving on to the UAE, oil infrastructure in this particular country has been affected as well, with disruptions reported at the Fujairah oil terminal. Extremely important. It is a key route that is used to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. Right here is the Fujairah oil terminal in the UAE. Meanwhile, remember, Israel has shut down production at the Leviathan gas field due to security risks, as Iran has also been giving a befitting reply. Shifting our focus now to Bahrain. Bahrain's Bapco refinery has halted operations after a missile strike disrupted the fuel supplies here at this particular Bapco refinery. At the same time, the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, this entire strait, as you can see, this particular region is the entire Strait of Hormuz. The entire strait has been disrupted. Shipping through one of the world's most important energy choke points has been disrupted. Nearly 20% of global oil and liquefied natural gas normally flows through this critical narrow passage. And now let's tell you how different countries have been responding to this crisis, starting with India. According to a reply in the upper house by the Minister of State for Petroleum and Natural Gas, India has enough reserves of crude oil and petroleum products to meet domestic demand for at least 74 days. So there is no need to panic at the moment. But remember, India has accelerated efforts to source crude oil through routes that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. Extremely important to note this. Sources in the government also say that energy imports are continuing smoothly from alternative routes. Once again, reiterating that there is no need to panic. There is initiative, there are efforts being made to make sure there is no deep fuel crisis, and domestic energy requirements are being fully met as per the government. Authorities also say that inflation risks remain manageable at the price levels. They are, still near the lower end of the RBI's tolerance band. So there is some sort of relief there at the moment, at least. The government has also invoked the Essential Commodities Act to ensure there is uninterrupted LPG supply. This particular act gives the government the power to control the production, supply, and distribution of critical goods. Now, the interval between LPG cylinder bookings has been increased from 21 days to 25 days now. Refineries have been asked to boost LPG production as well. In fact, they've also been asked to prioritize domestic consumers over commercial users. Let's move on to China now. What is China doing? Remember, this country has one of the world's largest strategic and commercial crude reserves. China holds an estimated 1.2 billion barrels of onshore crude stockpiles as of January this year. This is nearly 1.2 billion barrels that we're talking about here. And Beijing has instructed its refiners to prioritize domestic supply during the crisis of the moment. As per reports, authorities have asked major refineries to suspend their exports of diesel as well as gasoline and attempt to cancel previously arranged shipments. This was about China. Let's now talk about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has been closely monitoring the entire global oil situation. The country, remember, is vulnerable to supply shocks, especially after the 2022 fuel shortage crisis due to the broader economic collapse that Sri Lanka had to go through. The island nation is highly dependent on imports in the absence of any commercial crude oil reserves. Now, reports also say that the Sri Lankan government is bracing for prolonged volatility in global oil supplies and a potential rise in inflation. In fact, it's not just Sri Lanka. There are other countries that are looking at a potential crisis like this in the long term if this conflict continues. Let's now talk about Pakistan. In Pakistan, the government has announced a couple of austerity measures, starting with work-from-home arrangements that have been announced. Online classes have been encouraged to reduce fuel consumption as well. So schools are now turning to online mode for the moment. As per reports, the country currently, remember, holds about 25 days of petrol and diesel stocks and roughly 20 days of crude oil reserves. But panic buying, remember, has been reported at petrol stations as prices rise across Pakistan. Meanwhile, remember, the Group of Seven is considering releasing emergency oil reserves to stabilize global energy markets. The finance ministers from this particular bloc held discussions after crude prices crossed the $100 mark, which is, of course, a huge cause of concern. As per reports, several countries, including the United States, have supported deploying reserves that are held collectively through the International Energy Agency if supply disruptions deepen in the near future. Now, remember, this move is aimed at basically calming the markets and offsetting supply losses linked to the Strait of Hormuz crisis, which, as I said, this is, a cause of concern. This entire strait has been a cause of concern. So this is by far as to how, different countries have been grappling with a potential fuel crisis and how they're bracing themselves for the ripple effects of the West Asia conflict. It's back to you, Saleh.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Shreya. Now, as the global oil prices have surged past the $100 per barrel, a ripple of concern has, of course, spread across India. People are forming long queues outside of LPG and other cooking gas distribution centres as households are bracing for potential shortages in the days and weeks to come. The rising cost of fuel sparked a wave of panic buying in cities from Mumbai to Srinagar. The panic was particularly evident in urban centres where households depend heavily on LPG cylinders for daily cooking. The fears of shortages prompted many to in fact book cylinders earlier than usual, while some attempted to stockpile the supplies. Now, amidst this situation of panic buying, the government of India has intervened. It is trying to take some steps to maintain uninterrupted household fuel supplies. On LPG, the government has extended the cylinder booking period from 21 days to 25 days to curb hoarding and black marketing. Now, refineries have been ordered to ramp up LPG production, prioritizing household supply over commercial use. Government has also invoked Essential Commodities Act. Sources say that despite global turbulence, there is no shortage of petrol, diesel or aviation fuel in India, with ample stocks available and ongoing exports of ATF. Now, prices are expected to remain stable unless crude oil climbs above $130 per barrel.
The government has assured that there will be no hike in the oil prices, the petrol and the diesel prices, till the point the crude breaches the $130 a barrel mark. And the worry, of course, could be on the commercial LNG, for which the government has said that it's taking measures.
And cracks have appeared in urban hotspots where commercial sectors feel the squeeze first. Pressure is mounting in cities like Mumbai and Bengaluru. The shortage of commercial LPG cylinders is becoming a significant concern, and hotels and restaurants across the city are facing challenges in securing enough cylinders to meet with the operational needs.
Across the city of Mumbai, in restaurants and hotels heavily depend on LPG, and with supplies being disrupted, the establishments are facing the brunt as we speak. More than 20% of the restaurants are already affected. They have already started to shut down as far as the industry body is concerned. The association is also requesting for an urgent restoration as far as LPG situation is concerned. They really want the supplies to resume as soon as possible.
Now, Chennai too is grappling with a similar crisis, with the city's hotels and restaurants reporting a shortage in commercial cylinders.
We're also at a warehouse where these cylinders are stocked and distributed. They say for the last several days they have not received supply of commercial cylinders, and this entire load of cylinders that we see is that of empty commercial cylinders. So they also admit that the situation is quite dire, and hotels particularly are feeling the heat, and now they say that if they do not receive new supplies, they will have to scale down or shut down their operations and absorb huge losses.
And even in the Kashmir Valley, where the tourism sector is a vital part for the local economy, the effect of LPG shortage is being felt. Gas dealers in the region have warned that hotels and restaurants could face some operational disruptions if the supply does not stabilize in the coming days.
The gas dealers are saying in the Kashmir Valley that the supply that they've been given to these commercial centers would be impacted, and Kashmir Valley massively depends on the tourism industry, and it could impact the tourism industry as well.
And India uses roughly about 31.3 million tons of liquefied petroleum gas every year. About 62% of that requirement is met through the imports. Most of these supplies normally transit the Strait of Hormuz, but the ongoing conflict in West Asia has disrupted shipments, tightening availability.